Welcome everyone to another episode of Monte Talks. And today we will be talking about Nuxt, about Vue, about open source, and possibly much more. So for the host for today, you have me, Jacob Andrzejewski. I am a senior full stack developer and advocate at Monterail. And
me, I'm Szymon Licał. I'm an engineering manager at Monterail.
Yes, and our special guest for today, Daniel Roe, tech lead at Nuxt, currently at Vercel. But maybe instead of just me trying to explain everything about Daniel, which is not easy because the bio is quite long, I would say. Daniel, maybe if you could introduce yourself to the audience.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. And so I should introduce myself. So I'm a full-time open source developer. As you said, I lead the team building Nuxt, but I'm also involved in other projects as well, including in the Vue.js ecosystem. I'm on the team building Nitro. I have a few projects of my own too. I live in the UK, in Scotland, where it's currently a nice afternoon. And I'm not originally from here, though, as you might be able to tell. I'm originally from just outside Washington, D.C, where I grew up. I came to the UK for university, and I stayed ever since.
That was one of the biggest plot twists when we were in Vue.js Live in London, and then you said that you are not originally from UK. That was for me. What?
I promise I didn't try and change my accent or anything, but it did fade. It did soften, I think. I do somewhere have some recordings of me debating. I was very involved in debate in school. And so I have old debate rounds where I'm sort of cross-examining my opponents and things like that. And so probably I could find out what I used to sound like. But for myself, I can't hear any difference within my own head. You know, it's you can never tell these things. It's other people who tell you.
Yeah, sure. It's subconscious.
Yes, exactly. Who knows? I think it's a very interesting story, why people's accents change or why they don't. You know, is it to do with their identity, their perceived identity, you know, a desire to fit in or to empathize? I don't know. There are lots of different ways of reading these things. And I would love to know more about what makes these things happen.
Sounds great. I think that could be a topic for another Monte Talks podcast. Who knows?
Are you saying this one isn't about accents? Is that not what we're going to talk about today?
It could be. But I'm afraid both me and Szymon might not be as experienced as you are in terms of accents.
Well, I mean, I guess
I suppose so.
Yes, you're drawing a line under it. Okay, carry on. Yes.
Yeah. So, Daniel, you told us a bit about your bio, yourself, and I'm especially interested in what drew you to the Vue ecosystem, because right now, if you know JavaScript, you have a whole bunch of frameworks, tools that you can join if you want to build open source, contribute. So why Vue? Why Nuxt?
Well, I mean, I think there are two questions. There's one, what is historically what drew me to the Vue ecosystem? And then two, why am I still in the Vue ecosystem? So I think the historical question is that I had a small agency. We were building websites for people. That wasn't our main job, by the way. We were a communications agency. We helped businesses figure out what they needed to say and help them say it clearly and simply. But obviously, one of the ways you help them communicate is through an online presence. We also helped them with other ways, but we wanted also to build websites, and so we did. And we came at it from the WordPress end, because I had some experience tinkering with WordPress. And we gradually sought to add best practices to WordPress. So we looked, of course, to projects like Laravel, which were setting 12-factor methodology, best practice in the PHP world. And in Laravel, obviously, for both WordPress and Laravel, you're talking server-side rendered. You're writing it in PHP. You have these templates which mix HTML and some dynamic rendering of HTML. So JavaScript isn't first and foremost the language you're writing in. You're expecting it's a multi-page app by and large, and you can add some feeling of client-side rendered app by doing something like turbo and prefetching links and so on. But it's not the same. So in the Laravel ecosystem, there was, I think Taylor Otwell checked out Vue, thought it was very promising and recommended it, I think probably just in a tweet. And the whole ecosystem really got on board with Vue. And I think one of the reasons is because of the PHP blade syntax. So basically it meant you could write Vue in your PHP files and pull in Vue itself as a runtime from a CDN. Vue then discovers the templates in the page, and the templates in the page, because Vue is just valid HTML. So those templates that persist in the page at server-side render then become the declaration for what the interactive website is going to be. So you have the data bindings and so on. If you've ever loaded a page and you've seen curly braces in the HTML and they flicker out and suddenly you have an app, you might have come across a Vue app using this pattern. Obviously, you do want to cloak it. You shouldn't display it, but that might be a sign that you're seeing one of these old style Vue apps, and that became very common in the Laravel world, because you carry on with your server-side rendering, but then you just add these bits of interactivity. You're a bit of app that can be hydrated by Vue, and it was, I think, one of the reasons that Vue originally adopted this sort of terminology of a progressive framework, because you could take whatever you are currently using to render your website and add in Vue. So that's what we did. We added it in. We added it to our Laravel or WordPress-based apps. And at some point, we even started just building static HTML with Vue in it. And then at some point, I was looking for a server-side rendering framework built for Vue. And that was when I came across Nuxt and a number of others as well, which I evaluated at the time. So I very much came into Vue from I'm rendering HTML and I want to make it interactive direction, which it uniquely is able to do. This is not something you can do with React. You can't. It's not valid HTML. You can't write it in your HTML. It's just not possible. So and pretty much you need a build tool if you're going to do anything with React because of JSX. It's not valid JavaScript either. It needs a transform. So Vue was I think unique in being very, very close to the primitives of the web, and it still is. So that's still, I think, the reason why I would, even if it's not you write your template in HTML, Vue single file components are still written effectively in HTML, JavaScript, and CSS in separate blocks, like in a script tag, in a style tag, in a template tag. And that makes it so easy for people who are getting going with writing full stack JavaScript to do that, because you're not saying, hey, try and create a user interface in JavaScript. You're saying, hey, write this user interface in HTML, in CSS, and then you can use the script tag to make it, or Vue directives to add this sort of data binding concept. But fundamentally, what you're writing is HTML, and you never get too far from that. I would hope that people in the Vue ecosystem don't forget, and they don't get separated from things like semantic HTML and using what the platform gives you.
Sounds interesting. So at this point where you, let's say, started it with the agency, with WordPress, with communication, have you ever thought or expected that in few years in the future, you will be not using Nuxt, but building Nuxt?
No, not at all. Of course not. I mean, I think I got involved in the Nuxt ecosystem in, I think, a similar way to how I got involved or tried to get involved in the PHP ecosystem, by making helping out as I could. I think mostly that was to start with through Discord, or GitHub issues. If I would often come with my own question or bug, and someone else would help me with it, and then I could help other people with it. So it's very, very much something I've already received, which I'm passing on. And by and by, I started making PRs to fix bugs or add features that we needed. And honestly, there's nothing like the feeling of seeing a PR that you submit get merged. It's such a privilege, and it's so fun. You used to get such a rush. And then the release notes of the next release, they come out, and you're mentioned, and it's amazing. It's so fun. So, and then you start to feel part of a community. You're sort of building stuff together, and these are generally people you look up to and respect, and then they say something nice about what you've built, and that's really cool. So but no, that's obviously never anything that I was expecting, and it wasn't something that I was trying to get either.
I see. So when in terms of like the evolution of Nuxt framework for the time that you participated in the development, the evolution of it, you probably seen like many things that Nuxt has improved throughout those years. So which features or which improvements do you think were the most significant throughout those few years that you joined the core team, or right now you're leading the core team? Which things do you think stand out the most since you joined up until today?
So I think I think the server, so Nitro, is a total game changer in terms of what it's like to deploy a Nuxt app. Being able to deploy it to so many places, have it so performant, is just a totally different thing. And Nitro is changing the JavaScript world, not just in the Nuxt ecosystem, but also in the React ecosystem too. I mean, look at stuff like TanStack Start or Angular. Look at Analog. So I think that is one of the big things. I think Vite, I would point out as another huge thing. I mean, the developer experience of having feedback instantly as you're typing, and a lot of the things that the Vite ecosystem has pushed for. I think one of the things that people haven't, well, I think probably people do mention this, but it's the fact that writing Vite plugins and building on top of it is so easy. And that is really not to do with Vite, it's to do with Rollup and the amazing plugin API that was developed for Rollup, which Vite inherits and has built on top of, adding their own hooks. But it is this sort of object syntax plugin. It's very simple. It's much more simple than a Webpack plugin, but it's probably a little bit less powerful than a Webpack plugin in some ways. I mean, but the thing is, it's intuitive and you can easily write it. Whereas Webpack plugins, writing one of those, in an era before an LLM can assist you with it, they were incredibly painful and difficult to do if you didn't know how. So Vite has really changed the game, both for users and also for people building on top of it, like framework maintainers or people who even want to add a library that adds functionality to Vite or to your app. And I think it started like a little a Cambrian explosion, a proliferation of life and different kinds of libraries all around Vite. So I think that's probably maybe the second one I would point to. I mean, Nuxt itself has improved. I would like to think between 2 and 3 particularly, we saw a lot of improvements. And I think post release of version 3, a focus on stability and reliability. I hope some of that is also paid off too. But no, I think I could leave it there without going into too many more details.
So you kind of already dived into it a little bit, but if you could name like one single thing that would set Nuxt apart from other meta frameworks, let's say imagine you would like to sell Nuxt to React users. What would be like, the one big thing that sets it apart?
I think Nuxt's extensibility is what I would point to. So the fact that you have modules, you can deeply integrate with Nuxt and how it works. It's not a black box, which it's very much an extensible, hookable, modular build framework. A lot like Vite, actually. If Vite were your front-end or full stack framework, then that would be Nuxt, because it is deeply customizable. And that means that Nuxt has so many ecosystem integrations. So I think one of the reasons people will pick or think, why should I pick one framework over another? Knowing that you have access to lots and lots of different implementations and integrations is a key thing, but also knowing that you can build your own if there isn't one out there, because it's very possible to do that. And I think that is, I don't know which is cause and which is effect, but the fact is that there's a huge ecosystem of people who are doing this, module authors. Obviously, Jacob, you're one. Your Nuxt security module has got crazy number of downloads and usage, and there are lots of others of key features that you might ultimately want to be in the framework, but actually there's never any hold up. There's not a bottleneck on the framework side, because you can build it yourself. You can add stuff in, and that means that Nuxt isn't just a small core team or a slightly bigger ecosystem team. No, it's a lot bigger. It's very much a community driven project. So I'm not sure whether that comes from the fact that it's modular, or that's maybe why it's modular and why that's gone so well. But that's the thing I would point to first and foremost, which I know is weird, because probably a lot of people would talk about the developer experience, but maybe I'd say even maybe that's because it's community focused that the developer experience is good, because we all want to make the tool that we use on a daily basis better. But at the end of the day, I think it's the community that's first.
Yeah, and I can completely agree on that. Even looking at we have like weekly ecosystem team meetings, which Daniel usually runs on Friday. And usually when you have a core team of a framework, it's usually composed out of, let's say, 10 people. But if we look at the ecosystem team, which I'm also part of Nuxt, I believe right now it's around 30 or 40 people, something like this, or even more, which just shows that the community overall of the framework is huge, but also the people who are actively working on it every day, it's also significant. It's not like just 5 people working on it every day. It's like much more. And I really like what you said about the modules themselves. And I really think that the modules are a great way to actually ship some of the functionalities at certain point to the actual framework. This is exactly what is happening right now with the content security policy, which is one of the key features of Nuxt security module. And as you mentioned, it has a lot of downloads, a lot of users are using it. So it seems like maybe not all functionality of the module is highly, let's say, usable for all Nuxt users, but at least the content security policy is something that could be added as a part of the core framework. And this is a really nice benchmark, because if the module is used and the people are using it a lot, then it means that it could be added to the core framework. So for people who want to contribute and they are not entirely sure whether the feature should be part of core framework or not, they can easily create a module and get some feedback, get some insights from the other community members. If it's used a lot, then maybe it's an opportunity to also put it as a part of the core framework itself. But here I wanted to dive one more question before we move onto the open source part a bit more, because I wanted to ask about some challenges, because building communities, building the framework, contributing, maintaining open source is for sure difficult. It brings some challenges. So do you have, let's say, one biggest challenge that you faced throughout those last few years in Vue and Nuxt that you could share with us and the audience?
That's a good question. What is the biggest challenge? I think one of the challenges that I think is pretty central is the challenge of being a user. Because whenever you build something, it's most likely when people build something that's good, it's because they've needed it. So they deeply understand what the user of that product would want. And so they're solving their own problems, their own frictions, their own needs. And often, as you then devote more and more of your time to building the thing, you're devoting less of your time to actually using it, which means what happens? You can potentially become further and further removed from your user, which means that the code that you write and the features that you add might be intellectually satisfying, or you know, they're interesting to you, but are they actually making life better for the people who use it at the end of the day? So I think one of the biggest challenges for me is making sure that I have enough contact with the cutting edge of Nuxt, you know, that actually using it. And so I try to build projects myself. Before joining Vercel, I contracted with companies, which was also very helpful for me to see how things were being used. And that is the thing. I try and force myself to, okay, I'm actually just going to take a moment. I'm going to write a game. I want to make a game. Okay. Now I see that bit there is annoying. I need to change that. Or giving talks where I demo it as well is helpful, because you know, if there are rough edges, you'd start to see them at that point. But I think that is one of the challenges. I think another challenge is, particularly in the last few. I think another challenge is maybe saying no to good things, but that aren't totally in line with where you want to go. So I think, for example, one of the great things that we believe in the Nuxt project is the need for things to be open, for end users, people have choice about what they use. And so it's been challenging. For example, Sébastien and Alex were the original creators of Nuxt, two brothers. And Sébastien was leading another company, a company called Nuxt Labs. And they were building some very, very cool features and products, stuff like Nuxt Studio, Nuxt Hub, Volta, and more, Nuxt UI Pro. And I think one of the challenges is, you know, how do so I wasn't employed by Nuxt Labs, but I was leading the framework, leading the team building the framework. You know, how do you relate to a company which is building stuff? And Sébastien is you know, fully, his heart is totally pure. His desire is good. He's not looking to commercialize Nuxt or to anything to make life worse for users. At the same time, stuff like Nuxt Hub was built originally with one provider, and you know, not totally. I mean, that is how I guess you have to do it. So I understand, for example, that if you're building an MVP, you need to go with one provider. You need to provide a good experience there. But I think that being quite vulnerable here. I mean, Sébastien and I had some hard conversations about that, where, you know, I was advocating for stuff to be multi-provider, and thankfully things have come around now. So Cloudflare, Nuxt Hub is now, hopefully, still has great support for Cloudflare, but also will support other providers too, which feels like, you know, that is the direction that we would have wanted to take things in. But basically, I mean that as an example of the kind of thing, because there's nothing like there's no that's all good, right? But how do you decide which good thing to focus on and say, this is in line with where we want to grow? We want to grow in the direction of openness and choice. And that is going to be our priority. So, I mean, that always is going to be something that you that is a struggle for anyone leading anything, I guess. You just always have to try and figure out, where are we going to focus? What are we going to try and say no to? And I feel like openness and choice is one of the things that we're focusing on, and I'm glad we are.
I think there's a lot of good questions and thoughts shared here. And especially, I think this perspective from you on how you approach the open source is very interesting to hear. And maybe on that note, because you kind of focused on the challenges, what are the things that you value most about working in open source projects?
So I mean, so much to love about open source, but primarily, I mean, I think the key thing about it all is people. So open source basically at the end of the day starts with, hey, look at this cool thing. And now that's not something that you say in a vacuum. It only makes sense because there are other people, right? You're saying to other people, hey, look at this cool thing that I built, or this cool idea. And then, because it's open source, it's followed up with a question, hey, do you want to join? Do you want to do this together? And so it is all about this relationship between people. That is what it's all about. And that is also, therefore, what the most fun of it is. And also what the hardest bit of it is when you get further away from that. So when you're focusing on the chores and the boring stuff and the bit that isn't other people, that's more tricky. When you're not bringing out your cool little thing that you've just built, then that gets harder. But the thing that is most fun is absolutely getting to work with other people and build amazing, cool stuff with them. Like, admire other people, like receive applause in return. Like, it's fun. Also get to help people. People have questions, they need help, and you're able to make a difference to their lives. In a team, like in a company, you're limited in terms of who you are helping on a daily basis. You have your team, maybe you have your customer. If you can be focused on your customer too, and you can help them. It's limited. But when you're involved in an open source project, it's multiplied. You're helping people who are just far beyond the numbers of people you can help. It's amazing. It feels really, really great. And I think, and then you get to meet them in person too. Like just last week, obviously, we were able to meet in person in Wrocław, which is amazing. So that is, I would say it's all the people. Absolutely.
Yeah, completely agree. Just for the record, Daniel was in Wrocław for our Monterail Vue Meetup last week, where he gave a really, really interesting talk about vibe coding in Nuxt. So we'll be sharing it quite soon. There will be in this channel as well. So make sure to check it out as well. But you said about the people you can work with, the people you can help, and this is one of the core values of open source that I believe in as well. But I also wanted to ask about the collaboration between different frameworks, because obviously you can build things with other people, but the frameworks themselves, they are usually those kind of big entities that live and they believe in a bit different values, let's say, or they are built with different technologies. So do you see some opportunities for closer collaboration between different frameworks in the future? I've seen that you, at some point you did, I'm not sure if it was a collaboration or maybe a meeting with the Quick team. So do you plan to have something like this in the future as well for other frameworks?
So, I mean, I think one, it is always people. So even if you're saying it's a framework, it's not, it's people. Because particularly in open source, there is nothing that you can, so for example, if we said Nuxt is going to do X, nobody on the core team or even the ecosystem team is going to do that because we say that Nuxt is going to do it. they're only going to do it if, one, they're interested in doing it, or maybe if someone asks them personally, or they get nerd sniped into doing it. Someone says, "Oh, it's impossible to do it," and someone's like, "No, you can totally do it. Let me show you." So, but nothing happens just because you say that Nuxt is going to do something, right? As a framework, in a way, is a fiction. Like it's an idea that's in all of our heads, and it's a shared idea, so it exists along with a lot of other things that we care about, and in society or as humanity. Lots of things are these shared ideas, and like a framework like Nuxt is one too. So when you say collaborating with other frameworks, I push back and I say, no, it is always going to be people collaborating with people. And the challenge is, how do you make sure that you're collaborating with and talking to and working with people who are different from you? In this case, the difference is people who are different in that they're working in different frameworks. But we could extend the differences and talk about other ways too, because it's when you work with people who are different from you that you really have the opportunity to be creative and come up with things that you wouldn't otherwise think of. Because, maybe I'm just totally in my Vue head, and so I never even think of something that might come up to somebody, with a React brain. But at the same, it's absolutely worth saying is also true in all kinds of other ways in terms of gender and sexuality and like geographical location and language and any number of different things, like past experience, where people will have an idea or come up with something that just I never would. And so, yes, so collaborating across those boundaries with people who are different, have different experiences, absolutely something we need to do more of. And that's definitely true with people of different frameworks. So I try. One of the things that's most helpful for me in that is conferences, and particularly going to conferences that are not just Vue conferences, because then you're talking to other speakers, you're listening to talks that are about different things. People ask you questions that are from a different perspective. That's really helpful for me. Online, there is always access. You can always talk to people. You can always DM them. It's easy to do that. But the difficult thing is to be prompted to have something that comes up in your mind and thinks, we should talk about that. And so that is really the thing that I think you need to be already having some kind of spark. And you need to get that spark from somewhere.
I completely agree. I think it's also quite important to try to not be as close-minded. It's easy to become close-minded on certain topics, opinions, but it's always try and battle it. And also the thing that you said about conferences, I think it's even more visible, especially if you try to jump industries. For example, I once had the pleasure to visit a few game development conferences, and it was so mind-blowing to see what kind of problems are easy for them. They have really well figured out, and some that are easy for us, which for them are a huge pain in the ass and they didn't really figure out yet. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities for knowledge transfer that unfortunately for some reason didn't happen. Yeah. However, the question I'd like to ask you now is more about future, and it's definitely a question I think that you cannot kind of not ask nowadays. And that is, what do you think will be the role of AI in web development in the coming years?
So, I mean, that's as you say, it's a common question, and it's one that I think we're all thinking about a lot, because it is this new technology, new tool that is available to us, and we are, I think, more than anything else, we're tool users. As people, as like humanity, we're tool users. We're people who are able to use techniques and things that exist to achieve our objectives, and so the tools are constantly changing. And so sometimes you have what it feel like fundamental or revolutionary changes in the tools we have. So, horse and cart to motorized electric vehicle. I guess early automobiles were electric. So yes, you sort of have these sort of transitional moments. And I think a lot of people think that AI is that kind of change. Some people don't, but either way, it's a tool that's available. And so therefore, a lot of us, and therefore I think probably a lot of us should be trying it out, figuring out how we can use it to achieve our objectives. And so I think in the most optimistic view, AI makes it possible for us to be much more effective. So we can be maybe faster or spend less time on the boring parts of our job, or gain expertise in areas that would have taken us a lot longer otherwise. I don't know. Hopefully, they will augment the power that we as individuals possess. There are also more negative potential sides to LLMs and AI. I think that more negative side is less in code, less in tech, and much more in other parts of society, sort of AI-generated videos that are fooling people into thinking that they are real current events, or AI-generated text, confusing people who don't know what to trust, that kind of thing. And so that kind of societal change is something I'm very worried about. In tech, I think things are much more positive in terms of these are tools. The actual models produce code of varying qualities. It's staying on top and figuring out how to use them most effectively is almost a full-time job. I don't think, by the way, that anyone who is using their critical thinking skills or anyone who has embraced change is in any danger, because as with any tool, you always need people to evaluate the tool, to use the tool, and I think that is what that's our job is to figure out new technology and use it effectively. And today that might be Vue, that might be HTML and JavaScript, but these things are changing all the time, both the languages and the tools that we have. I remember, this is probably going to date me, I remember before VS Code was a thing. I think it existed, but there was a time when Atom was what you used. That was the tool. It was, why wouldn't you use Atom? And then there's an interesting story, I think, as to why Atom died and why VS Code became so good so quickly. It happened overnight, it feels like. But the tools changed. And honestly, we love our tools as developers. We care a lot about our tools, which is right. We customize them, we make them perfect, we hone them, we get rid of any friction, we set up our dot files, whatever. That is a great thing to do. But we're not stuck at any one moment in time. We are just constantly iterating. How can I make my experience better? How can I make my tools better? And if that's you, you've got nothing to worry about. That's exactly the kind of person we need in this age.
I can definitely relate to that. And on the topic of dating myself, for a side note, I'm, for example, using Vim. So I do know a lot about tinkering, but for example, one of the early challenges with this new AI era was that there wasn't that much good support for AI tools with Vim. So for example, for myself, I had to early on, if I wanted to learn and try, adapt on how to now change my workflow, which was very centric to one tool, and try to plug in other tools to it. But unfortunately, it worked sometimes better and sometimes worked worse. But yeah, you gotta try and adapt. And if it doesn't work for you, I think that's also fine. But the important thing is to not close yourself and try things yourself to build your own opinion. On the note of the future itself, maybe one final question on this theme for me. What do you think the community could do best to support the growth of the Vue and Nuxt ecosystem?
I think, what could the community do? I think one thing is build cool things and share them with people. So being able to point to projects that are built with Vue and Nuxt is great. There are so many. We don't always do such a good job about promoting that. I know there are other frameworks and people who are, really, they really do. They really every single site they'll shout about, and I feel like we could maybe be better about that. I think the other thing that we could do is at the level of helping people find jobs, because people come to me and then they say, oh, the problem is the Vue ecosystem, so hard to find developers. I have developers come to me and they say, what the problem is with the Vue ecosystem? It's so hard to find people who are looking for Vue developers. You should talk to each other. That there's this people have this perception that there's a much richer vein of jobs in the React ecosystem, and I'm not sure that is true. But clearly, we're not doing as good a job as we should be in terms of communicating that to people. And maybe it is just about the forums that are out there, or the ways people are looking for jobs. And it might also be that people who can use Vue can probably use React, because it's often when you choose Vue, you're choosing something, so you're probably proficient in more than one thing. Whereas it might not necessarily be the case in the other way, although of course it's true for many people. So I don't know. I feel like something in line with the jobs. So if you're looking for a side project, I feel like maybe that might be something to do.
So on the top of that, if someone wants to start developing in Vue or Nuxt, what would be your advice?
Developing in Vue, so they've maybe only used React or Svelte or something.
Or
like that.
Even they don't have any experience, just they heard that there's this cool framework Vue, and also a maybe cooler framework, meta framework Nuxt, and they wanted to try it out. So what would be your first advice for them?
So one thing that I would say is try something like sfc.vue.js.org, where you can actually just write some code in the browser and see what it produces. So you don't even have to create a build setup. That's maybe a first port of call. So if you're going through a tutorial or whatever, you can just write your code in the browser, see what it does, interact with it, and you get errors if you do things in the wrong way. And then I would say write HTML. So figure out how to major on HTML, and then write that in your SFC. There's some great courses out there. Personally, I learned Vue from Laracasts, given my origin, my way into Vue. And there was a free learning Vue course there, which I found great. But there are lots more if that's how you learn. If it's not, you might try and build some kind of project or a game. If that's your objective, and you can basically Google, look for tutorials, look for answers. Whenever you come across a question, like I don't get how to do this, that personally suits me very well. That's often how I learn things. But I think there could be a lot of other ways. But yes, I would say try and use it, and get rid of as much friction as you can to trying to use it. So sfc.vue.js.org is a good start.
Sounds great. I remember my beginnings. So it was with Vue Mastery, with Adam Jar, who was doing the course on Vue socks. So I'm always saying that Vue socks, in my heart. But in general, yeah, find the course that you can learn and build some even a simple app, because then it will show you if it's the right tool for you. But apart from just giving advices to other people in terms of how they should start, I wonder if at your career, your growth throughout those years, do you have anything that you would do differently? Like you look at yourself from the past and you think, I should have done this different way. Maybe it will be in a different, better place nowadays. Do you have something like this, or are you completely happy with where you are?
I think I'm happy with where I am. I'm really pleased to be here, and I feel like my path has been a very winding one. So it's not been straightforward, And I fear if I were to change too much about it, I might not get here. I might be somewhere else totally different. So I'd keep it. I'd keep it at the moment. That doesn't mean I did everything right. I made a lot of mistakes, but the mistakes were also useful.
Definitely. So maybe one question related to that. What do you think is the key to staying passionate and motivated as a developer?
I think it's not necessarily your job to stay motivated and passionate, or to make sure that you're motivated and passionate. I think a lot of the things that get rid of your motivation or passion are not things that you do, are things that are done to you. And so I think it's the managers of developers who are more responsible. And I think some of the things that are helpful, that in my experience, are like a sense of ownership, of a power of being able to do things that affect you. So for example, if you are, so, you know, where do you receive value? You can receive value from like people saying, well done, that's great. You can receive value from getting your salary or getting a bonus, for example. There are lots of ways you can receive value. Now, do you have any ability to influence that, to put in the work or do something that will mean that you get back something that you find valuable, whether that is your bonus or whether that is the approval of your peers or whatever. And I feel like when you are not able to influence that, maybe a target is assigned, which is totally out of your control, or maybe you are working on a thing which you've been given a ticket for and then it's closed and it never gets deployed. Or or it's maybe just really long lived and you never see the result. You're basically being detached. So you as an individual have no ability to achieve that or receive value, and that just leads straight to burnout. But I think that's not your fault. You know, that is on your organization, on your manager. Maybe there are things you can do to help. But it's tricky. And I think, I think one thing you can do is, if you don't have those opportunities at work, you can find opportunities to like receive that value outside of work. So open source might be something like that, or building your side project might be something like that. But whatever it is, find something where what you do has an immediate, demonstrable, valuable response to you. Whether that is people telling you it's great, or being able to share it on social media, or just the pleasure of doing it, or whatever it is, you want that. And so, and if you're not getting it at work, talk to your manager, talk to HR, figure out how you can find a different job, you know, because that is the kind of thing that will eventually, lead to burnout. And again, it's not your fault. If you're not feeling motivated, that's there might be some things you can try and do to help, but that's probably not on you.
Yeah, I think that it's something that I can also say as a manager is really do reach out. Usually people reach out to me too late, which is a shame, but quite commonly, unfortunately, that is the case, because they usually don't think that the situation is really resolvable in any way, or maybe that there isn't some actions, or they just don't see them. So yeah, definitely, if you are in a position, if you have a manager, reach out to them, definitely. So as the time is soon coming to a close, is there anything else you would like to share with the Vue Nuxt community before we wrap up?
No, just keep being amazing, I guess.
Awesome. So to end things up, where can our listeners find you online and follow your projects and what you are doing?
So I have a website at roe.dev where you can find out how to contact me, I guess. I also have an open diary if you want to book a call or a chat. I'm pretty happy to do that. I'm on social media as well, most social media networks. Blue Sky is probably the best one to reach me on. but yeah, I'm always glad to see a DM or a message.
Okay, so I think that ends up our today's episode. So thank you very much, Daniel, for joining us and sharing a bit of your career, a bit of your path, and what it's now at Nuxt, and a bit about the future.